Lav, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Do you have a favorite quote, something that inspires or motivates you that you can share with us?
So actually, I was thinking a lot about that because I'm a quotes person, and there's maybe two that I would like to share with you that I talk to with my team all the time. The first one is from Warren Buffett. It takes 20 years to build a reputation. It takes 5 minutes to ruin it. I tell them that all the time just to make sure that we're kind of on the level and that we make sure that we don't do any reputation destroying things because it's very hard to get out of it after you get into it. And then my marketing manager reminded me this morning that I also used to remind them a lot of this other quote when we were starting. And that is, if you're not embarrassed of the first version of your product, you launch too late. That's a Reid Hoffman quote, which I love very much because I find that the teams tend to try to get to the perfect solution right away. And I'm always pushing them, just launch it. Let's talk to customers. And then we're going to figure out how to make it better. So I used to tell them this quote all the time, just to remind them not to try to be too perfect with things,
So that is actually, those are two great quotes, and I think they're very relevant to your story, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, because what you just told me instantly reminds me of dozens of conversations I've had with founders who say, I can't launch too quickly because it'll jeopardize my reputation or the reputation of the product, right? So I have to get it right before I get it out there. And you find a way to balance the two. So we'll dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, so here, let me just tell you really quickly, because I think there's a very simple answer to that. And that's something I discovered in my first business. When I was working with my first business partner, I discovered that most people care about the solution to a problem, not about how the solution looks like. So if your product is garbage looking, but it solves a problem for them, they're willing to pay for it. But if it's beautiful and perfectly designed and everything's wonderful about it, but it does not solve their problem, they will not pay for it. And so this is why it's it doesn't really destroy it, but you have to solve the problem well. If you're solving your customer's problem really well, they'll pay for it even if it looks like crap. That's been my experience by working with all those customers in my first business. And also it's been our experience now in Vacation Tracker as well.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think in many ways, if you're solving the problem, it looks like crap and people are still buying it and paying for it, that is a huge sign of validation that you're solving the right problem, because they're willing to put up with all those other things because the problem is important enough for them to solve. Whereas a lot of people say, oh yeah, this is a problem. And then you give them the solution and they're like, well, I don't want to solve it that much or that badly. It's
Exactly. Or I'm not willing to pay for this solution, right? They're willing to pay when you talk to them, but when it comes down to actually forking over $20 or $30 or whatever the price of the product is, then it's I'm not so sure. So an ugly product that they're willing to pay for really gives you a good sense of, okay, they're getting value out of this. Even though it's ugly, they're still getting value out of it, which is in my opinion, a very strong signal that you're onto something.
Yeah. All right. So tell us about Vacation Tracker. What does the product do? Who is it for? And what's the main problem you're helping to solve?
So it's a leave management solution for small to medium businesses. It's really helping people, plan better, know who's in out of the office, and get real-time updates, as to when people are not there. It's really intended for small to medium businesses, and we built this product as we were facing this problem ourselves in our first company. We were using an Excel file, which is what most people kind of start off with. And eventually you hit a wall with this Excel file. It becomes unmanageable when you get bigger than 10, 15 people. And we had this problem in our first company. And then we were like, well, we're a software company. Let's kind of build our own solution. And we did. But generally it was intended initially for small to medium businesses like ours. And then it expanded to all types of organizations.
Yeah. When you said that, at first it sounded like you said lead management, but it's leave management, right?
No, leave management. So sick days, holidays, PTO, maternity leave, all kinds of things like this.
Great. I just want to make that clear for anybody listening, right? That's what we're talking about. All right. And give us a sense of the size of the business. Where are you in terms of revenue, number of customers, size of team?
So we just crossed about 2,500 customers right now. And we just hired somebody to make the team 20 people. And we're hitting about 2 million in annual recurring revenue, hopefully this month, maybe early next month, if all goes well.
And you're bootstrapped.
Yeah, we're bootstrapped. We actually used the profits from our first business to start this business. We were solving our own problem and we were using our own profits to get this business going. And now it's fully standalone, and we bootstrapped it from the beginning.
Great. Okay, so the business has been around for about 6.5 years. Vacation Tracker. You were working on your previous business, which was a services company. So why don't we go back to around that time of 2017, 2018? What were you doing at the time, and where did this idea for Vacation Tracker come from?
So my partner and I always knew we wanted to do a product. Like, we started off in service because we just didn't have the funds to, spend 100, 200 grand like on a product before we get some traction. And so basically we said, okay, let's start with services and then we'll eventually do products. So Cloud Horizon, our first company, was starting to take off. We were getting more and more like clients and taking on bigger projects, and the team was expanding. At one point, we reached 35 people. And the whole time in the back of our head, we had this like, we got to do our own product. We were building products for other people. We were learning a bunch of stuff about it. And we're like, we want to do our own product. But, we were having one successful year after another. New clients were coming in. Business was growing. We would have been idiots to turn some of these customers away. But we did have a hackathon internally at one point, and we decided to work on a couple of ideas, namely some problems we were having internally. And one of them was vacation, like this, like what I mentioned before. We had this Excel file we were breaking our heads on, and we were like, let's kind of build something that we can automate this and have a software running, like keeping track of when people are in and out of the office. And so we built this very crude version of it for our hackathon. We built a landing page for it. We spent maybe $100, $200 on some Google ads and some Facebook ads, drew some traffic on it, got a couple of signups, and basically left it there. Then my partner did a couple of conferences, because he goes around conferences and he does presentations. So as part of his conferences, in his conference presentations, he was basically saying, hey, we're building this thing. If you want to sign up, we'll let you guys know when we launch. And so a couple more email addresses came from that. And then we just kind of forgot about it. We were too busy running our first business until one day I received this email from a guy who signed up on our wait list. And he's like, hey, I've signed up to your wait list like 9 months ago. Like, when are you guys going to launch, And I was talking to my partner and I was like, this guy really wants this product. He went through all this trouble to figure out who we are and who I am and get my email address and then write me this really nice email asking me about how, like, when are we going to launch this product? Like, and we had nothing at that point, right? It was like just a landing page with like, we're launching soon. Sign up here for us to let you into the beta, the classic kind of, lean startup approach. And so I was like, we should consider building this product. And roughly at that same time, one of our customers in Cloud Horizon got acquired by a private equity firm, and the private equity firm told them, get rid of all external contractors. And so they suddenly canceled this contract, and they told us, listen, at the end of this month, we got to stop. And these two guys that are working on the project, like, they're going to have to stop. And I was like, okay, no problem. So we took these two guys and we put them to work on two different product ideas, one of which was Vacation Tracker. And the other one was actually a time tracking solution that we wanted was specifically tailored for companies like Cloud Horizon. And so we started building these two products. And actually, I thought that the other idea was going to be better. I was like, nobody, like who has this problem? It's only us that has this like vacation tracking problem. This is like tiny market for this product, like the much bigger market for the time tracking solution. And so, but we said like, okay, we have two guys, let's kind of start building both and then we'll see where it goes. Fast forward a couple of months, Vacation Tracker was already kind of complete, and we had decided to keep it very simple, like request leaves, approve leaves, and notifications, which was, again, the problem we were having. The main problem we were having is people would take off to go on vacation and not notify the team. And we had teams of 5-6 people working on projects. So one person leaves, and then you need a piece of information from that person. And it's like, oh, sorry, he's gone, and he's gone for 2 weeks, and like we have to wait, basically. So this was slowing our projects down. So one of the main features we wanted to include was a notification service to let everybody know, hey, here's who's off next week. So if you need something from them, get it this week because they're not going to be here next week. So those are the three kind of core features that we launched with.
Okay, so let me ask you a couple of questions there. So for two questions. One, from the time you did the hackathon and you put up this landing page to the time you got this email from this guy who really wanted Vacation Tracker, how long was that period of time where nothing really was happening? And the second part was in terms of figuring out the initial functionality, did you talk to any customers?
No. So we didn't talk to, we were the customer. We were building it for ourselves, right? So that's, it's one of those things, which is why we prefer to build products that kind of scratch our own itch, I suppose, because it was a problem we understood and we built it for ourselves first. And then we were like, okay, let's see if there's other people out there that experience the problem in the same way as us. And then we started talking to customers. But before I get into that, to answer your question, it was about a year from the moment we did the hackathon, because it was like roughly end of year, the previous year that we did it. And then it slept basically for that whole year. And then December of the following year, I got that email right as like that customer was canceling the contract. And that's why we were like, it was all happening at the same time. And we were like, okay, well, this guy really wants this product. We should probably, that should be one of the two products we should build, you know?
I mean, it's really interesting. And it's like, okay, it was only one guy at the time, but for somebody to join a waiting list and 9 months later still remember they joined that waiting list, and then to go through and find you, that's a pretty motivated, person.
Exactly. And that for me was a really strong signal that like, there's probably other people out there that have the same problem that we're having, and that there's not a good solution out there to address this problem, because we were really tackling it through Slack. That was our thing. We were like, it's a Slack-based leave tracking tool. And so we were like, okay, this is actually like something that maybe there's other people, because this was a very different organization. I don't want to get into who they are, but it was like a radically different organization than the one that we were. And this guy really felt this pain, obviously, quite acutely, if he was willing to go through all this trouble to reach out to me. And so getting back to your second question of how we decided the features, it was really like, what's the minimum that we need here? We need to request leave and we need to approve leave. And obviously the tracking piece, you need users, and you need to be able to track on their profiles, like what, how many days they took off for sick leave, for PTO and so forth. So really it was like the core of the system, which was a kind of user profiles, I guess, that I forgot to mention that part. And then the ability to request, the ability to approve. And then the other thing that we needed was a notification that goes inside Slack to let our team members know, hey, here's who's off next week. With the idea being that if you see that somebody that's on your team is off and you need something and you think you might need something from them, well, reach out to that person this week. So we didn't really do much market research to start, because we were really solving our own problem to start. But then when we launched, what we did was, so one of the things I should mention about our landing page was we had the pricing on it, but we scratched off the pricing. And at the time, I believe we wrote it was going to be $29 for 25 users and then $1 per user per month after that, or something along those lines. I don't remember exactly, but we put the pricing on the page and then we scratched it off and we said 6 months free for our beta users. Right. So when we started letting those people on our mailing list like inside into the product, we told them, you have 6 months free right now. You don't have to pay us anything. But what we expect in return from you guys is feedback. And very quickly they started using it and they said, well, I need the ability to sync this with Google Calendar. No problem. We're going to build like the sync to Google Calendar. I need more leave types. Right now, at the beginning was only PTO. I need sick days. I need maternity leave. I need, they gave us lists of things they needed. Great. Let's build that. I need an export function, so I can synchronize this with my payroll system. No problem. So we started talking to our users, and we really started shaping the product after we launched, not before.
Okay, got it. How many people did you have on your wait list at when you shipped the product?
So there was about 60, and we emailed all of them, and I believe about 20 of them kind of signed up. But really, out of those 20 that signed up, maybe 10 of them were actually active users.
Got it. Okay. So here's what often happens when you scratch your own itch. And I can say this with confidence because I have lots of conversations with founders about this. They identify a problem, they build a solution or something, for themselves, and then they say, let's go and find somebody else who has this problem. And they end up with two problems that I see. Either is they struggle to find anybody else who has that problem because, maybe it could be anybody, and maybe they're not talking to the right people or the right types of companies or whatever. Or they find people who have the problem, but it's not painful enough. So there's no real strong desire for them to shift. And in this case, I could imagine some companies saying, oh yeah, I want this. And then you say, okay, pay up. And they're like, well, my spreadsheet isn't that bad. It kind of gets the job done, right? What was your experience of going through that journey?
I don't think it's quite a pain, and you lose accuracy. And this is kind of an important problem in the sense that vacation tracking in and of itself might not be as important as the part that correlates to the payroll. Because a lot of people get paid based on vacation, and then there's vacation pay, and then if there's unused vacations and all of that stuff. So it's not just like keeping track of who's in and out of the office. There's a second component to it that relates to payroll, right? And so this is why I think this problem is a little bit more acute, because if there's accuracy issues there, then you're not paying people properly. And that's kind of the worst thing, in my opinion, that you can do in a business is underpay or overpay people. You should be paying them fairly, right? For the amount of time that they've been working.
Right. But you weren't solving payroll at that time.
No, we weren't. We didn't even realize this was a problem initially, right? We only figured it out afterwards, you know?
Okay, got it. So, but even though you weren't solving the payroll piece of that, being able to provide your customers with a more accurate way of managing this information still kind of indirectly was helping them solve that problem. Is that how you discovered the one of the drivers for them to want to buy the product?
Yeah, so that exactly. We were talking to them, and very quickly we realized that vacation correlates to payroll, which was not something that we were thinking about initially. And that's like, I mentioned the export feature. That was one of the main reasons why like people were asking us for the export feature, and many people were asking for this feature. So we were like, okay, this is clearly something important for our customers. We should kind of zero in on this and develop the product in this direction, because accuracy is something clear that's important to them. The other part of it is like, you're right. Like, we weren't sure that this was an important problem, but that guy doing this whole maneuver to fix that gave us a strong indication that maybe this is a bigger problem than we initially anticipated.
Yeah. Okay, great. So you didn't have a massive list, but even getting 10 fairly active users who are willing to provide you feedback at that early stage is super valuable. What happened at the end of the 6 months when you asked people to stop paying?
So the first thing that happened right as the 6 months were kind of expiring was that our only developer who was working on the project cleared or wiped the production database. And we joke that he became a senior when that happened. We were like, you became a senior. And we scrambled. We somehow managed to recover it. And then we put better procedures and all this, because we were kind of just go, scrambling, building, and not really thinking about doing things properly. Again, this whole quote about not, being embarrassed about the first version of your product was coming in all the time. And so we extended everybody. We apologized. We fixed the problem. We extended everybody a month. And then we were waiting, right? And so our goal was to just get one paying customer. Remember, at that time, we were still like, the first business was like eating up most of our time. This was kind of this like little side hustle that we were doing on the side. We weren't even like putting too much mental bandwidth on it, but we were obviously like trying to get it to work. And I remember I was sitting in Belgrade at the time and having like a lunch with the team, and I got the Stripe notification, the first $25, and that was like the happiest moment of my life up until I hadn't had my kid yet. So I was like at the happiest moment of my life up until that point, that first $25, because many people that did this told me it was going to be brutally difficult to get that first customer to fork over the first 25 or whatever the price of your product is. And so I remember clearly sitting in that restaurant and getting this notification and being like, Rakia for everybody. Like, I spent way more than $25 getting a drink for everybody in that restaurant. But I was so excited that we made this first $25. And then very rapidly after, it's maybe, I don't even have a clear answer why. I think it was because we were listening to our customers. Like, actually, one of the things that I can say that contributed a lot towards these paying customers starting like to kind of start paying us like after those first 6 months is that we installed a web chat very early on. Like, we had that little bubble that you can chat with us. My partner was against this. He's like, you're crazy. We're going to get a bunch of spam and people telling us. I'm like, no. I'm going to handle this. We got to talk to our customers. It's the only way that they're going to talk to us if they see this little bubble. I'll handle it. Don't worry. Like, you don't need to worry about this. I'll be the one chatting with them. And so I was the one doing all the chats and talking with them. And I think this helped a lot because they understood that they were talking to one of the founders. I was really trying to understand their problems as I was talking to them. I was even jumping on calls with them. They were showing me things. I was also doing demos at the time. I started kind of like, okay, like, let's jump on a quick call. I'll do a demo for you. And so I was demoing the product for them. And during the demos, I was asking them a lot of questions about like, okay, what's the problem that you're having? Like, what are you using right now? Like, why do you feel that this is not a good solution for you right now? So I was asking them all these questions as I was doing demos. And this was really a great learning opportunity for us. I was taking really good notes, then typing all these notes up and like putting them in our Confluence. And so a lot of our team was looking at it like, and so I think this was a big contributor towards why people were willing to pay for our product, because we were very quickly adding the things that they were wanting. And then they would come to us and ask for something else. And we were like, okay, give me until like, I don't know, November, and I'll have that ready for you. But because I already told you that I'm going to launch this thing in September, and we launched it in September, we had some credibility with them that we were actually going to deliver on these things. And I think, one of the questions that you asked me earlier was like the differentiation. One of the things that I think that differentiates our product from the others is that it's chat first, if I can say it like that. Remember like a while back when mobile came and everyone was like, build mobile first? Well, we built chat first. It was like Slack first. We really built the product around Slack, which other people did not do. Other people built the product and then they built the Slack integration. We built the Slack integration and then we were thinking about the product from the other direction. And the reason for that is because at the time, our team was using a bunch of different tools: Jira, Confluence, Bitbucket, like time tracking tools. Like they had to like remember all these logins and passwords. And we didn't want them to have to remember another login and password for another website, which they were going to use a couple of times per year. So the idea was, let's build this in Slack, because we're using Slack all the time and we should be able to do 90% of day-to-day stuff inside Slack. So let's start by thinking about this product Slack first, and then we're going to build all the other things that need to integrate into it afterwards. And so I think this is what really differentiated us. And this is why customers liked our product, because they wanted something like us inside Slack. At the time, it was only Slack. And they wanted something that was directly inside Slack, easy to manage. People don't have to leave. They don't have to remember another login. They have to reset passwords all the time. It's like you do /vacation, you do your business inside Slack, and that's it. You don't have to get out of Slack almost ever, right? So this is what I think was the reason why people started kind of taking on the product initially.
So I think there's a few things you said that I want to just recap, because I think this is really valuable for founders who are in those early stages where they've got a product and maybe, they're struggling with differentiation or convincing customers to buy. And there was three things that I heard, and from my own personal experience as well, when I'm more likely to start paying for a product with very little effort, very little convincing, it's these types of things. So the first one was like being able to talk to the founder, and this interaction, and to know that you're talking to somebody who cares, who's listening, and who can actually do something about your feedback, right? Like, a number of times I've written detailed feedback for some product, and a customer support rep says, "Thanks, I'll let the product team know." And nothing's ever going to happen with that, versus when you talk to the founder and they're like, "You know what? I like that. I'm going to do something about it." So that's number one. Number two, we already talked about, and you stated this pretty early on, solving a problem and doing it better than what they can do today. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like, the most beautiful, elegant solution, but you're solving it well. And then the third thing, I think, is iterating fast. When people see not only that their feedback is being heard, but they keep seeing new improvements, and just incrementally, it just seems to be getting better and better. You get this thing like this, there's this momentum, there's this energy, this thing is going somewhere, and it's getting better and better. And probably if I don't start paying now, they're going to charge me 5 or 10 times more in a year's time. So I might as well get on the train today, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think that when they find value in it, and like you said, they're talking to their founder and they feel that things are moving. This is part of the reason why we have the change log linked to the dashboard, so they can easily click on it and see all the stuff we're releasing regularly and stuff, so they can see there's motion happening, that we didn't just build this and kind of leave it there. I think all those things make a big difference. But I got to tell you, we weren't actively thinking about this stuff. Maybe it's because we're a little bit more experienced as entrepreneurs, and we saw, like, through our customers, we were observing a lot, like a lot of the customers that we had in Cloud Horizon who were building SaaS products, we were observing, and maybe we subconsciously picked up on some of these things. But I have to say, I have to be perfectly honest. Not like we were like, we have to be consciously thinking about this. It's just kind of came intuitively for us. And I'm guessing it's because of our previous experiences.
Yeah. So getting to the first 10 customers, were you able to do that from that email list of 60 people, or did you have to generate more leads to get to the first 10?
So I think because it wasn't just like we were continuously having people, because that page was there for a year. I guess that kind of helped us a little bit. So like it was indexed by Google and people were finding us. So names kept coming into the list. Not many, but a few were kind of coming in here and there, and we would kind of onboard them and talk to them, like, and give demos to them and so forth. And so for the first 10 customers, I would say it was probably that mailing list. My co-founder is an AWS serverless hero, so I have a very strong technical co-founder. who's also like relatively well known in the serverless community. And so he gets invited to a lot of conferences. And because the product is built using serverless, and then he's talking about serverless, he was always using the product as an example in his presentations, right? So we were after every conference that he would go to, we would get a handful of new signups, right? Some of these people that were there at the presentation, I guess their teams were like having similar problems using the Excel file. And so we'd get a couple of signups, and those were much stronger leads because my co-founder has this credibility, right? And so like when he talks about it and they kind of understand the technical background, I feel that those leads were much stronger leads. They took us a lot more seriously from the start than somebody who just Googled us and found us on the internet.
But don't you think that there's also a potential risk, like people just come, hear his talk and they're interested in serverless and they sign up, and it's just more about looking at how the product works rather than actually wanting to pay for it to track leave and stuff like that. Were you attracting those type of people as well?
I don't find that we were. I mean, maybe there's a few people that kind of signed up. I mean, we didn't convert all those people that signed up to our wait list. So obviously some of them probably signed up to check out the product. But all the ones that I spoke to, there's a couple that come to mind. They were all like, yeah, we saw your partner talk. It was very interesting. And I thought that like how you guys build the product is very interesting. And like your hosting, like our hosting costs, we have like over 100,000 users. We pay $1,000 a month for our hosting, which is nothing. It's peanuts, right? But that's because we're using serverless. So he drills that point a lot in his presentations, right? And so people find that fascinating. And then I guess like it just, again, like the people I spoke to, it wasn't because they were looking at how the product works. They were just like, oh, this seems interesting and we have this problem and let's connect these two, right? That was kind of like so that's probably for our first 10 customers. It was heavily based on that. And so I'm not sure how helpful that is to others. It's, I think, more interesting how we went from 100 to 1,000, from 10 to 1,000. That's where we weren't leveraging so much my partner's like credibility and all that. It was.
Well, let's talk about that, because you, at this point, many founders start thinking about, okay, what does my marketing look like? What channels should I focus on? Should I do content marketing? Should I send cold emails? Should I do ads? Should I do whatever, right? And there's a whole bunch of experimentation or just trial and error that goes into it. You guys took a different approach.
We did. So the way we did it was, because this was such a lab project, like inside of our existing company. It wasn't even a separate company yet. Like it was kind of a one guy inside of Cloud Horizon working on this with us kind of part-time jumping in. And so we were like, how are we going to market this? And this was maybe like a month before the 6 months free was expiring for everybody. And so basically, we're like, what are we going to do? And then it just so happens that within our network, we found out that the former chief, we were able to get in touch with the former chief marketing officer of Toggle, which was the time tracker we were using at the time. And it was a very successful time tracker. It was the main one in the market. Now I think Clockify's become bigger than Toggle, but at the time, Toggle was the time tracker. And so we're like, okay, they were very successful. They had a lot of good marketing initiatives. Let's try to talk to her. So we spoke to her, and she was interested to work with us. And basically, we hired her to develop a marketing plan and strategy for us for the first 2 years, because we knew we weren't going to be able to afford on our little shoestring budget that we had. We knew we weren't going to be able to afford like a serious marketer like her. We're going to have to hire somebody a little bit more junior. And probably this person's not really going to know what they're supposed to do. So maybe it makes sense that we hire this person to write the plan for us and kind of come up with what we're going to do over the first 2 years, and then hire the junior person more for the execution of the plan. And that's exactly what we did. And the plan was heavily focused on content, because Toggle really grew mainly because of all the content that they were doing. And so I remember in the beginning, I don't remember the entire plan, but one of the things was like publish 5 articles per week, like one per weekday for the first year. Because in the first year or two, like Google's not really taking your site seriously. Like, there's this whole domain authority issue and so forth. But, they want to see consistency. They want to see quality content. So just keep publishing it. So that's what we did. We were literally publishing one article per weekday for like a year straight. And that was, and it wasn't just like the articles. We had like landing pages. We were focused on specific keywords. We did do some keyword research, but really it was like figuring out what the pain point of our customer is, and then trying to lead them towards Vacation Tracker as the solution. One of the challenges that we ran into initially, in our marketing efforts was most people didn't know that you can do this inside Slack. So if they're looking for a solution, they're looking for a leave tracker. But the really slick part of the product was the fact that it integrated with Slack, which most people had no clue that you can do this inside Slack. So like now I think more and more people are aware that you can do this kind of stuff inside Slack and Microsoft Teams. But before, apps were just kind of starting. And so like a big challenge for us was like, hey, you should connect your Slack because it's the only way that you can sign up for this product actually is if you're using Slack. But that was kind of a challenge for us in marketing, was kind of explaining to them like, hey, you should do this inside Slack because it's going to make your life so much easier. User management, logins, there's so many advantages to using it in Slack, but people just didn't know.
Okay, so I want to talk more about this marketing strategy and plan, because this was the one thing that you just focused on and executed, and which drove 90% of your leads, your sales and ultimately got you to 7 figures.
Yeah, and I mean, to this day, it's our best channel. It's not contributing as much as it did in the first 2 years, but to this day, content is our best channel, hands down.
So, I mean, it sounds like this CMO from Toggle, I mean, she didn't have a crystal ball that she could just look at your business and figure out, okay, these are the channels you should go after or whatever. It sounds more like she took the playbook from what Toggle had done and adapted it to how you could use it for your business. And at the same time, you guys made the bet that this is the one thing we're going to focus on. And if we execute and do this right, it may take 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, but eventually we're going to start to get payback and returns on this effort we're going to put into this.
Exactly.
How did you figure out what type of content to create? Because at that point, you're still not that super clear about who your ICP is.
We had no idea who we thought our ICP was companies like Cloud Horizon, basically. I mean, we had a sense that there's others out there because of that guy that I mentioned before who reached out to us. But really, most of the companies that were signing up were technology companies. So we were like, okay, it's like little tech teams like ours that are the ICP. So for the longest time, we thought that. We only actually discovered our ICP maybe 2 years, like dove in and discovered what the ICP is in detail about 2 years ago. But for the longest time, we were like thinking that our ICP is just small tech companies and small tech teams like ours. But how did we decide to place this bet? Really, we were consumers also of different products, and we also had customers in our first company, which we were building this type of product for. Maybe not necessarily in the HR space, but different products like for different industries. And we saw that content was working very well. Some of the products that we were using, we discovered through the content they were publishing. So when she came and she said, like, I think you guys should do content because that worked really well for us in Toggle, I didn't doubt that this could probably work very well for us as well. And then like we said, okay, let's and also the other part of it is like we just didn't have this huge budget. So we felt that like, trying to experiment Google ads, you can get killed with Google ads, right? Like, tens of thousands of dollars. And I know people that got killed because, Google just likes to spend money, right, on ads, and like they're going to max out your budget like very quickly. And so we just didn't have the funds to like invest in these fancy initiatives. We had to keep it like relatively simple. And content was not very expensive for us to produce. Now, to answer your question about how do we decide what content, she helped us. Like as part of the strategy, she kind of identified some good keywords for us to focus on, some good content that she thought was relevant for the people that she thought was like, she thought at the time thought were our ICP. And we very strongly, like very strictly followed that playbook. We didn't deviate much from it in the first 2 years. And so like, but actually what we discovered was that we need to have like much more specific content for our, for our audience. So initially, like we published all types of content, things that I think that maybe are not necessarily so relevant to our audience, things like books that I read over the summer, or like destinations to visit in former Yugoslavia because our team is from Serbia. And then we discovered that we were attracting all this traffic that doesn't really care about our product. They're like caring more about destinations that they want to visit. Yeah, they like, so it's like, hang on a second, like, yes, we're driving traffic, which is a vanity metric. Wonderful. Yay. Traffic grew 50%, but signups are like flat, right? So it's like, clearly we're not doing the right thing here. Luckily, we discovered that relatively quickly, but, and then we started publishing more specific content. But it took us a little while to learn this lesson. And even like to write very specific content, it took us quite a while to figure out like the real problems that our customers are facing, and then to like write about those problems.
So give me an example. So we talked about these really broad articles which were attracting the wrong types of customers. And then you said you got a little bit more focus, and then it took even longer to get really specific. So what were give me a couple of examples of what that type of content looked like.
So, we started writing more about like the product itself and the things that the product does rather than about vacation tracking or vacations broadly, right? And so like, but even that wasn't really like, I'm trying to think, I can't remember, it was a while ago, these, I can tell you what we're writing about right now, which is very specific and very targeted for our audience. And it's like, I'll use accruals as an example. So like some companies accrue leave or PTO for their employees. Actually, in Canada, it's a law that you have to accrue leave. Our company doesn't do it. All our companies don't do it. But it's kind of technically you're supposed to like accrue leave. And so like there's so many different ways to do it. And so right now we're writing articles that explain like weekly accruals, like monthly accruals, payouts, like, how payouts for accruals work, what happens like if somebody accrues and then leaves your company, like this kind of stuff, like stuff that's very specific type of problems that they may face if they need to accrue leave for their employees. And then it's like, well, if you need to accrue and if you need to do it accurately, you should use Vacation Tracker, right? So we tie it in then with the product, but it's really like talking about specific problems. And then we have a feature inside of the product which addresses that particular problem. And then we try to tie that into the content as well. That's something that we're doing a lot more these days. Whereas before we weren't even mentioning the product inside of the posts, right? And we don't always mention it still. Sometimes we talk like maternity leave broadly. We explain, and we write comparison articles about maternity leaves in different countries and so forth. So we do publish some content like that, which is more tailored for like HR managers, which are kind of our audience. And, we don't necessarily just publish content right now that's like kind of that last mile sell, meaning like I have this problem and I'm looking for a solution and need it like right now. We also publish content with the idea that, okay, you're going to read about a problem that you're having. You may not necessarily be ready to buy Vacation Tracker today, or your company might not necessarily be like the ideal customer for Vacation Tracker, but you may switch jobs because people switch jobs every couple of years. And we want you to remember us. And when you go to your next company and you're having this problem, we want Vacation Tracker to be the first person you think of, right? And so this is the other part of the strategy that we're doing now. And that's more kind of nurturing our leads over the long term, which we weren't doing at all before. But I don't think that's something people should do initially. That's something you do a little bit later on when you're more established and you have a larger marketing team that you can focus on both like the stuff that's kind of immediate, it's going to draw an audience immediately and like, or customers immediately, and then stuff that's going to nurture these leads over time.
Okay. So I want to unpack that a little bit, and let's think about founders like Lav who are out there right now, who are writing articles about the books they're reading this summer and attracting the wrong type of customers or organic search traffic. Now, what it sounds like what happened with you was as you learn more about your customers, you built a better product with more specific features, like you said, the helping them solve the payroll issue, helping them solve accruals and so on. And so customers were educating you in some sense of what they needed from the product. You were building that into the product, which was then giving you more detailed understanding of your customers' problems that you could write about. And then as you wrote about those problems, you could point back to the product and say, this is how we solve those problems. Beautiful, right? But when you're in the early stages, you don't have that information. You don't have the nuance and the details of all these customer problems. Your product doesn't even have the features to solve those problems yet because you haven't built those features yet. So if you were back in that situation, what do you think you might have done differently to get to where you are now faster, even if you didn't have all of that stuff built in your product?
That's a it's always hard to answer those what would you do differently questions with with the experience that I have now. I think I spoke a lot to customers, and I was asking them questions, but I'm not sure that I was asking them the right questions to lead me to these types of problems that they're having. Like I was talking more broadly, but I wasn't zeroing in. Like they would tell me I'm solving this problem. I'm breaking my head on this Excel file. I need to automate it. And I wouldn't drill into that. You know what I mean? I wouldn't like ask like the way you're drilling in, like, oh, wait, you said that right now. Let me unpack that. Like I was like, okay, they're breaking their head on the Excel file, right? So I didn't understand at that stage how important like articulating the problem back to the customer is. And also another thing that we're doing now that I'm actually like pushing our marketing team to do even more now is like using the customer's own words. Like we did a bunch of surveys, we record like demos and setup calls that we do with customers. So we have all the words that they use. We have the language that they use, and we don't use it. I was just looking at our homepage and I'm like, how many of our customers use the word outdated spreadsheets to describe their problem? And like, that's right on our, like, and that's a problem I have right now. I'm telling you, and I'm like, guys, we should use the language that our customers are using, right? That's something I didn't even pay attention to initially. It's something I'm starting to pay attention to like in the last year or two. But it's like, to answer your question, it's like, I would really try to unpack the problem and really try to understand the nuances of the problem rather than, okay, that's the problem that they're having, got it, and like move on to the next thing. There's a lot of nuance around these problems, and like figuring out how to understand it very well, I think is going to help you explain that to explain back to the customer why your solution is the right solution, and using it in their own words too, because you may have the words in your head for what the right solution is, but your customers have probably a very different way of expressing the same problem, right? And so if you can figure out how to articulate that problem back to them in their own words, it's going to resonate with them much better than if you try to articulate it to them in your own words.
Love that. Love it. Yeah. And yeah, I think so the two things were, number one is keep drilling down into the problem. Automating a spreadsheet is not the problem. That's what they think is the solution to their problem. And it's almost like asking, like, I mean, you wouldn't say this to them, but really what you're saying is when they say, I have this problem with automating spreadsheets, so what? Right? Well, I can't do this, so what? Well, I can't do that. And then you keep drilling down and peeling back layers of the onion until you get to what the real problem with pain is. And then, as you said, once you can articulate it back to them that you understand their problem and you're using their words and their terminology, their expressions, that's when people are like, he gets it. Like, you might not even have the product and they're still like, he can solve my problem.
Exactly. Because people don't buy products. They buy solutions to problems. They have pains and you want, like, I don't want to have this pain anymore. Give me something that I can pay for that I don't have this pain anymore. That's what they're looking for. They don't care about your fancy like features and all this stuff. They want to know, I have this problem and your product is going to solve my problem. And I'm going to spend this much less time per week dealing with this because your product solves it for me. That's what they're looking for. And so this is why I feel it's so important to really understand their problem so you can articulate it back to them.
So that got you, just by executing this strategy, and obviously it didn't happen overnight, but you stuck to the plan. You're publishing this content regularly. You're getting more and more targeted with the content, and eventually it starts to pay off. You're getting more, organic search traffic. You're getting more right types of customers. You're converting them. The other way that you told me that you were acquiring customers, probably not as much, but maybe the 10%, was through the app store. So we're talking about Slack, and then now I think you support Microsoft Teams as well.
Yeah, and Google Workspaces, and we have email. So we are on all three of those. Google Workspaces as an app store as well. Microsoft Teams is an app store, and Slack is an app store. So I would say that's probably our second best channel are the app stores.
Have you struggled to get discovered in there, or has it been fairly easy? I mean, there's one step in terms of actually getting, listed in these app stores, but then the second thing is, okay, how easy or hard is it for people to find you?
So yeah, it's a good question. Initially, we were just putting whatever on the page and we were trying to describe the product, but then we discovered there's best practices in how you make your listings. There's also ways that you can talk to Microsoft and you can talk to Slack and get featured in different sections. So this is all the stuff that we were doing. We were actually like trying so hard with Slack. Now we're actually in the brilliant bots section and in like a HR section. So we're in a couple of sections besides just, you're browsing through the entire app store. So that definitely helped getting put into these sections. We were featured at one point. That gave us a little boost as well. So it's not just like put up your stuff in the app store and they'll come, there's also some work to be done there, optimizing your listings. There's best practices again, and it's different from Slack than it is from Microsoft Teams, because different types of companies go with Slack than would go with Teams. So how you present your product in the Microsoft Teams store is very different than the Slack store. You'll notice that I'm not really talking about the Google store because it doesn't really drive that many signups for us. We're there. It does send us a sign up here and there, but I don't really find people look for Google integrations through like the Google App Store. They just go on a product, they see it's there, they see the Google login, and they click login with Google, right? So I don't think they're really searching for it through the Google App Store. So that hasn't been a significant driver of signups for us. But Teams and Slack app stores definitely have been. And we did spend quite a bit of time over the years, optimizing like the listing, the wording we're using, the pictures that how we're presenting the product in the pictures, and then we spoke to Microsoft as well. Actually, like I find that Microsoft is super helpful. Like, when it comes to this, they're very willing to help you if you want to talk to them. And so there's a lot of people that are willing to help you optimize your listings. And if you're willing to work with them, they can even put you in presentations and stuff. And, so actually Microsoft's been a lot more helpful than Slack, to be honest with you, when it comes to this stuff. But Slack too, is you just have to be persistent with Slack. You just have to keep going. Eventually somebody's gonna, hey, okay, yes, I got your 8th email. Let me see what I can do to help you, but you got to keep going because, they didn't answer our first, second, maybe even third email when we were trying to reach out to them.
Now, a lot of people try to build or make the transition from a services to a product business. And it wasn't, an overnight thing for you guys, but there is something really special about selling a product. And as we saw from your example of how you celebrated that first $25, right? It's just a very special thing. How long did it take you to get to that first million in ARR? And what happened with the services business in terms of, kind of transitioning from one to the other?
So I have a bit of a unique story there. I was actually going through a divorce, right, as all this stuff was happening. And I had like a 1-year-old child that I had to like be, taken care of on a half-time basis because we had split custody. So I was having a really hard time managing both of the businesses. Probably Vacation Tracker could have grown a little bit faster if I was able to dedicate more time to it, but I was just all over the place. I was trying to run the services business, and that was kind of generating most of the revenue at the time. So I had to like keep focused on that because that was basically fine. Like we were starting to have revenue in Vacation Tracker, but not enough like to kind of pay for itself. So the gap was being covered by the revenue that was coming from the first business. And so I was having a really hard time. And then I decided to step down as CEO of the first company so I could focus on Vacation Tracker because I felt that the future was here. It's something my partner and I always wanted to do. And even though this was the cash generating machine, like I felt that the long term was here, and that if I wanted this to really work, I needed to like fully focus or focus as much as 80% of my time on this rather than 80% on Cloud Horizon and 20% on Vacation Tracker. I needed to flip those two. I found somebody, actually I wouldn't find somebody, he was already in the company, he was the general manager of our Serbia office, and he took over as CEO from the company for me. That made it a little bit easier for me to be able to focus more on Vacation Tracker. And that's where I think that things really started to take off more, because before that we were just kind of, it was more of a side hustle. And while we saw traction, we were very excited about it. The big money was coming in from the other business, and it was hard for us to justify spending crazy amounts of time on this little project that was generating $5,000 in revenue. Meanwhile, the other business is generating $200,000 in revenue, and I'm gonna like drop that and focus on this. Like it kind of didn't make sense at the time. And so like, obviously we're going to prioritize this one, but I realized that the long term, I wanted to focus more on this. So I found like somebody to replace me. He replaced me. We did a good transition period. He was very good. Like, he took over for me, and then COVID hit, by the way. That was like, he took over from me, and then bam, COVID hits. And it made it very difficult, like for that first business. The second business was like, Vacation Tracker was kind of taking off during COVID. And so I was able to focus more on Vacation Tracker. My partner was still kind of between both businesses. And when I was able to start spending more time during the day on talking to customers, on like, looking at our marketing initiatives, on like figuring out which features like we were going to build, because we didn't have a product manager at the time, that really helped us to start like acquiring more customers and converting more customers. and acquiring bigger customers as well, because I was talking to more people and they were taking us more seriously. And then over time, we realized that when Vacation Tracker grew big enough, we realized that we didn't really want to continue in the other business because it was just too demanding, and we just, to be honest with you, I just didn't like that business. I had a lot of battle wounds, if I can say it like that, from being in that business, including like part of the reason why I got divorced was because I was so committed to that business, and so there was a lot of stuff that I just wanted to leave behind there, I needed a fresh start. I needed something new to really take on. And this was Vacation Tracker. And I really dove into it head first. And I believe a part of my exit from the personal problems that I was having was just burying myself in my work and working like crazy and figuring out all this stuff and reading everything that I could about SaaS businesses and how to, pricing and financing. And although we never raised money, but I was just interested in how to run finance, my background's in finance, but running a service business and doing finance for a service business versus doing one for for a SaaS business, it's a bit different. So I was learning about this kind of stuff. So this is where I really felt that the business started taking off, is when I started being able to commit more fully to it.
Yeah. So what's happened with the service business now? Have you completely exited from it? Do you still own part of the business, or?
Yeah. So no, we shut it down. We tried to sell it at one point, and that didn't work out. And then when that didn't work out, the person that was that was CEO of the company, he decided he wanted to leave, and then the option was do we come back, and try to revive the business? I don't think so. Vacation Tracker is doing really well, and so we didn't want to do that. Do we hire somebody new? But then we have to onboard this person. We have to train them. We didn't have anybody in the company that can do this. And I got remarried after after I got divorced. So my second wife was pregnant with my second child at the time. And I was like, I can't do this. I got 2 kids now. I can't do this. So we just made the decision to wind the business down. And I mean, it was still generating cash for us. So it was we're gonna see how we're gonna make this work. We're gonna have to cut our salaries a little bit, and just to be able to keep Vacation Tracker profitable. And I have a very simple rule: let's spend less than we earn. I know it sounds crazy because people spend way more than I know it's people are like, are you crazy when I tell them that? But actually, it's a very simple rule that's kept us alive in both businesses. Is we're always trying to spend less than we earn. So we had to cut our salaries a little bit, had to reduce some expenses, had to reorganize things. And then we went off just through Vacation Tracker. And when we were both able to focus 100%, that's when things again started taking off even more, So I don't know if that answers your question. It's a little bit more of a personal story because I was dealing with a lot of stuff personally at the time. But yeah, maybe there's others that they're dealing in similar situations. And if there are, you can get through it. Believe me, it's there's a light at the end of that tunnel.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I mean, it's a great story. I love how, just this whole business of that one guy harassing you, right, for the product. That was kind of the wake up call to just set you off in this new direction with this business. I love that. We should wrap up though. Let's get into the lightning round. So I've got 7 quick fire questions for you. What's one of the best pieces of business advice you've received?
So when I was still working at General Electric before we started the first company, I wrote a business plan for the first company and I sent it to the most experienced business person that I know. And I remember very clearly one of the pieces of advice he gave me. He said, you're trying to focus on quality and price at the same time, which is impossible. You should be aware that there's 2 types of people in this world. There's quality sensitive people and there's price sensitive people. And my advice to you is to focus on the quality sensitive people, because there's always going to be somebody cheaper than you. And if you're trying to compete on price, it's going to be a race to the bottom every single time. He's like, what I would do is I would focus on the quality sensitive people, build a quality product, build a quality service, and then target those people that are willing to pay for that. And I've kind of always kept that advice in both companies. We're always trying to target the quality sensitive people. And I would say that that's probably one of the most important pieces of advice I got very early on, even before we started the businesses.
I love that. Strategy 101. That's cool stuff. What book would you recommend to our audience and why?
So I would recommend 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It really helped me. I know it's an old book, but it really helped me figure out how to get myself better organized, my own life, and how to, look at things a certain way, or I would say the right way. So I would say that's probably, out of the business books, one of the best ones. I should probably reread it because I read it a while ago and I needed a little refresher. And I like to do that with some books. And I just want to add a couple of biographies that I thought were fantastic because I think those are really inspiring. So Shoe Dog, which is the book about Phil Knight and Nike. Wow, probably one of the best business biographies. It's so amusing and interesting and inspiring. Highly recommend that one. And then also Elon Musk and Becoming Steve Jobs. I think those are very inspiring books. And I read them. I was like, let's get to work, like, come on, So I feel that these are some great books if you want some inspiration. Read about some of their challenges because, wow, these guys had to go through some crazy stuff to get to where they are.
That's awesome. What's one attribute or characteristic in your mind of a successful founder?
Persistence. That's the most important, hands down, the most important. Keep going. That's the thing. Keep going in the face of adversity. Keep going. Persistence is what marks the difference between success and failure.
What's your favorite personal productivity tool or habit?
My wife makes fun of me for this all the time. I like to have systems for everything. Like this shirt, for example, this is my uniform. I wear it every day. It's a system. I have a system for my clothing. I have a system for how I eat. I have a system for things to eliminate thinking so I can save my mental bandwidth for the really important decisions and also my decision power, because I think there's a limited amount of decision power. And so if you're thinking about what am I going to eat for breakfast and what am I going to wear today, you're wasting that decision-making power on these trivial things. So I try to sort all that stuff through a system so I don't have to think about these things, and then I can get to work and do the important stuff and like really focus my mental bandwidth on the most important things.
How did you learn about that? Is there a book or something that you used that helped you figure that stuff out? And
so Steve Jobs used to wear that turtleneck every day. And I remember somebody writing about that. And Mark Zuckerberg also had this thing. And I remember somebody writing an article about that. I don't remember who, and reading it about this exactly about this decision-making and like how limited it is and how you should how the reason they do this is because they're trying to conserve the energy for the important stuff. And I thought that made a lot of sense, so I decided to adopt it.
What's a new or crazy business idea you'd love to pursue if you had the time? And I think you might already be working on something, right?
We are. So when all this AI stuff started coming out, my partner and I got really excited about it because in the 90s, I was into computers and I was using computers back in the DOS days, coding in BASIC and stuff. And so it really feels that AI is kind of like at that stage of computers right now. So I feel that there's a big wave coming and we need to be on it, right? And so the problem we've kind of really feel like solving is advice to founders, like kind of what you're doing, but do that to using AI. So one of the great things that or actually we're very lucky that we have this is we have a lot of mentors who've been helping us over the years. A lot of successful people for some reason decided to take a bet on us and just invest time talking to us and giving us a lot of incredible advice. And without these people, we wouldn't be where we are today. But we recognize that this is a luxury that we have that probably a lot of founders don't have. So what we want to build is co-founder GPT, or that's at least a working title for it. So it's we want to build an AI system that's going to allow other people who don't have the luxury that we have of having these mentors advise them on the business. We want to build an AI system that can do that for them and also help them do some marketing, code a website and do some things like this. This is kind of the big idea that we're exploring right now. We're in the meantime exploring a couple of smaller ideas, but that's kind of the big one that we'd like to tackle in the next couple of years.
Cool. What's an interesting or fun fact about you that most people don't know?
I've been DJing for the last 30 years.
All right. Love it. And finally, what's one of your most important passions outside of your work?
So I guess the last question should kind of tip it off. I love music. I spend a lot of time listening to music with my son, all kinds of music. I'm discovering as I'm educating my son about music, how diverse my musical tastes are and how much I love it. And really, I would say that's probably my other passion outside of entrepreneurship is I just love music.
What kind of gear do you use for DJing these days? Because I mean, you and I are probably from you're probably similar age, and I remember the days of the Technics turntables, and
yeah, that's what I started with.
Yeah.
So I had a Technics turntables and a Newmark, and not even the 1200s. I couldn't afford to get the 1200s when I was starting, so I got this 800s or something. It was Technics, but and then I got the 1200s with a Newmark mixer, and then eventually I got the CDJs, and then eventually I transitioned to Tractor, which is what I'm using to this day. And now I just DJ for fun for myself as a kind of creative outlet. But I use Tractor right now. I have an Allen and Heath mixer because my favorite DJs, they use Allen and Heath, and it's just the sound quality on this mixer is just like on another level. And it's a mixer I bought 10 years ago. I'm still using it to this day. It's an incredible mixer. And then I have the Tractor controllers. I have like I don't remember, I think it's the X10 or something. So it's like the little controller, which allows you to control 2 decks. And then I have the other one, which allows you to control stems. That's the one I have at my cottage, and that's my main setup. And then in Montreal here, where at my house, I have the Tractor, kind of the whole console, where you have I forget what the model number is, but it's basically you have the decks and you have the fader, and everything's like built into one unit. So that I have here for when I want to play here in Montreal, when I need a moment to just get out of everything and just get into the music and forget about everything,
Awesome. That's so cool. All right. Well, Lav, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure talking about Vacation Tracker, the story, and just the journey that you guys have been on, and the sort of the lessons you've learned along the way. If people want to learn more about Vacation Tracker, they can go to vacationtracker.io. And if folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Just shoot me an email. I'm actually very very accessible, and I talk to everybody. So you could send me an email to lav@vacationtracker.io. And I love helping other entrepreneurs because I got so much help over the years. I feel that I need to give back right now. So if there's somebody out there that I can help out, I'm happy to do so.
Awesome. Thanks, man. It's been a pleasure. And I wish you and the team the best of success.
Thank you so much for having me, Omer.
My pleasure. Cheers.